a lot of fans of Oshinoko has now been saying that Oshinoko has fallen off. And personally, I don't think so. Because in terms of the conversation and the discourse that has been surrounding the series, and hell, even yesterday, Oshinoko as a series in Japanese was trending worldwide on social media. I don't think that the series has necessarily fallen off. I think that in general, it is probably more popular than it has ever been. And I think big reasons for that is because the discussion topics of what's been happening in the latest chapters of the manga. And so today, I want to talk about just the recent events of Oshinoko, talk about some criticisms, some valid criticisms, but also trying to defend some elements of the new direction the story has taken, or not really new direction, but more or less kind of reestablishing something that has been set up since the very beginning of the story. So if you do not want to be spoiled, for instance, if you're not up to date with the manga of Oshinoko, or you don't want to hear about anything that's potentially happening for the next chapter because leaks have been out, I don't recommend you continue onward with this video. But if you do not care and you want to continue watching, by all means, because I want to talk about a lot of different things when it comes to this video. So, from what I can gauge, just from my tweets I made yesterday with this tweet and also this tweet, I've come to the conclusion the community is half and half. Like, half the community is very happy with the developments of what's happening with Ruby and Aqua, and the other half just outright hate it, dropping the series, etc. And I'm just gonna play devil's advocate here and say, you know, I'm on both sides. I can understand why people would be uncomfortable and not like the developments with Aqua and Ruby. It makes, yeah, I can understand that completely. But I also can understand the other side of people basically saying that this has been happening in the story. Why does it upset you so bad? Because Chapter 1 of the story pretty much establishes that this is what would have happened eventually once Sarina and Aqua basically were to meet once again after they were reborn and know who each other was. It was bound to happen, because, I mean, she literally confessed to him in Chapter 1, and then he literally said he would marry her. Like, he would consider it and marry her once she gets of age. So, all things considered, the establishment of Aqua and Ruby potentially having romantic feelings or getting together has been there since Chapter 1. So this isn't necessarily something completely left field that came out of nowhere in the manga of Oshinoko. So anyone that remembers the first chapter definitely is going to be like, yeah, this makes sense. It was going to happen eventually. Now, once again, it's completely fine to have criticisms and stuff and not like this development, and I'll talk about that in a second. But overall, in terms of content, it has been established since the very beginning. Now, I personally don't think, like I said, that the series has fallen off, because the discussion around this series is ridiculous. I saw so many people that don't even talk about manga and anime commenting on this yesterday. And I think that says enough. That, you know, you have even people that are jumping into the discourse, the conversation, that are clout chasing, obviously, to discuss things they have nothing or know nothing about within the manga. For instance, people that don't even read the series, people that don't watch the anime, are diving into the convo and trying to clout chase and rage bait because, you know, Oshinoko is a very popular topic to talk about right now. Now, let's get into those genuine criticisms. So, if we're wanting to really criticize the whole developments of the manga, what's been happening as of late with Aqua and Ruby, one big criticism that does need to be talked about is the overall pacing. And I've seen this complaint already happen a few times, like people have mentioned it in my comments from my videos, I've seen it on Twitter, and so I'm kind of just going to be rehashing what some others have said online, but it is still very valid criticism that I completely agree with and does need to be talked about. I think the pacing of the manga is a little bit, you know, I want to keep it blunt, S. Like, you know, the final arc's pacing could be a lot better. I'm not saying that the series is bad. I'm not saying that. I'm not. I'm just saying that it's very clear with Aka and Mingo's, like, style, what they're doing with Oshinoko, that, you know, this is the final arc, as we know. This is the final saga, the final arc of the story, and there's a lot of plot points before this arc started to happen, you know, that needed to be settled. I mean, hell, the very main villain, you know, Aqua and Ruby's father, you know, really didn't have any development or any information known about him until this arc, which was very underwhelming for a lot of people, and it makes a lot of sense, because, you know, you'd think that the final villain would already have had a lot more interaction within the story. We might have been introduced to him and not really know who it is, etc. All these different little things, but it didn't happen literally until the final arc. And I think that, it's very disappointing because there could have been a lot more setup and establishment to some things within the story. And the same thing could be said for Aqua and Ruby's relationship and what's been going on here. Because prior to all these events now with Sarna or Ruby being gushy and all that over, Aqua, we saw her really not liking Aqua because of the whole thing with Ide revealing private information, all that, really upset Ruby. Makes a lot of sense. But, the big point of the matter is that there was a complete whiplash. Once she found out who he really was, she got all gushy over him, and then she, wanted to kiss him, be with him, etc. Makes sense, yeah, but there could have been a lot more establishing moments prior to this arc of Aqua and Ruby's relationship deepening and developing. Yeah, there was many moments that showed some scenes with them, but there could have been a lot more moments of them reminiscing about the past, maybe in the darkness of, what would have happened if, Sarna was still around and she married the doctor/sensei, what things would have been different. We could have seen a lot more establishing moments throughout the story with that, but we really didn't within the manga of Oshi no Ko. The same could be said for Aqua as well, to get more of a perspective on this whole event that's been taking place within the story. So yes, one of the big fundamental flaws I think that this whole section has is the pacing. There could have been a lot more gradual development within the story for this, and I think that's one of the big reasons why people are very upset and against the development of this, is because it feels like such a major contrast or whiplash in comparison to what has been happening within the story. Even though it clearly was established back in chapter 1 that this was bound to happen eventually, with Sarna basically saying, "Marry me." So even if it was established, there could have been a lot more in between to develop it and make it feel better paced. Now, I do want to say something. Aqua and Mingo are not trying to say that this relationship, if it really does fully happen, is healthy. And I think if there's one thing that has remained very consistent with Oshi no Ko, is that the relationships are consistently toxic. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we gotta just look at the track record of relationships. Hell, let's start off with Ai's relationship, the father of Aqua and Ruby. She fell in love at an early age, she had children before she was an adult, and then she died and got killed by him. That's almost as toxic as you could pretty much get. Then we have the whole situation with Aqua and Ruby's father pretty much getting, done in by a PDF file, yikes, straight up yikes, so, we got that. Then, we have the whole stuff with Akane and Aqua, and they're both psychopaths. They're not good for each other. They're really not. Then we have Kana. Kana is not necessarily completely right, and Aqua really isn't. And Kana's too good for Aqua, so she shouldn't even be with him. She would be ruined by Aqua if they were to get together, so that shouldn't happen. That would be completely toxic as a relationship. She would, be ripped apart by Aqua. And then Ruby and Aqua's relationship, obviously, the low-hanging fruit, they're siblings. Yeah, on top of that, it's just with their whole connection in the past, with the relationship to Ai and all that, and everything going on, the murder plot, or to get back at their father, all these different type of things, the relationship would not necessarily be healthy either. So every relationship within the story, pretty much, has just been outright toxic. It is not healthy, and Aqua and Mingo have demonstrated this, that they're not trying to glorify it and say that it's a good thing. It has always been demonstrated as something that is really bad. So I do want to point out, even if we have these lovey-dovey moments that are trying to be cutesy or established discussion, it's not still being presented in a very good light. It is still undertones of it very messed up and very unhealthy and toxic. That is something that does need to be mentioned in genuine defense to what has been happening within the story. Now, obviously, this could change depending on how Aqua and Mingo write this, but we'll see where that goes. However, the point I'm trying to make is, Oshi no Ko, overall, it has been pretty good. I think that it makes sense why people would drop the series thanks to the recent developments, but I think those that, drop it really weren't paying attention to the themes that were set up in the first chapter. I think most people that probably are dropping the series are mega fans that probably really like, let's say, Akane or Kana, and they want them to win. It makes sense. Anytime you have, a romance-type story, they're gonna have shippers that are just gonna be very upset. Once again, I'm a Kana person. I like Kana. She's my favorite. If anyone I would want to see happy, to get with anyone, would be Kana, but I don't think she should get with Aqua. I'm just gonna be completely blunt. So, if anyone, honestly, Ruby and Aqua. That's who I ship technically. They are meant for each other. They're both toxic. The story began with them. It'd be perfect, honestly. But I'm going to leave it at that. I just wanted to talk about the latest events of Oshi no Ko. Do you think the series has fallen off? Be honest in the comments below. But with that, be safe, stay healthy. Chibi out.